everyone! Start with a request made by the Catholic Gaming Nerd. Now, I am sure that you have seen us collaborate on my channel and on his channel. If you like my channel, go ahead and check his out as well. He wanted me to do my version of a series that he does on his channel called ISTJ Observations. Kind of just make it my catch-all series. And it will also give me a great chance to be more personal with you guys, as well as address questions and comments that you guys have given me on this channel. Talk to you very personally. The Catholic Gaming Nerd likes to keep his videos very realistic, very authentic, very unedited. I am a compulsive editor. I might have a problem. I just have to edit everything, but I will do my best. Not long after I had uploaded my INFJ video, one of my friends said that it seemed highly positive what I said about INFJs. And that comment kind of hit me between the eyes because I hadn't really noticed that. And I hadn't really noticed that for two reasons. One, I like to go primarily by this book. Oh crud, the bookmark's falling out. This is the book that I use primarily for the MBTI series, and I trust the info in it pretty darn well to make it my main source, and I try not to really deviate, at least that much, from what it says. Like, I will use a few other sources. Didn't really notice it because I was just trying to stay true to this primary source. And this book is pretty positive toward INFJs. I think the main two things negative that it really said about INFJs was that whenever INFJs go into counseling, and we are prone to doing that, we tend to like going into counseling and therapy, psychology as professions. Whenever we're counseling somebody else, we tend to get eruptions of our own emotions, and yeah, that's definitely not a good thing whenever you're trying to really listen and be objective to someone that you're counseling, and then you're like freaking out inside all of a sudden because their emotions are triggering yours. It's not a good thing. And the second thing that it said in the book was it talked about how INFJ moms, or I guess parents, but it specifically said moms, tend to over-identify with their children to an extent that's healthy to neither of them. Those are really the main two negative things that it had to say about INFJ traits. The second reason, and it's a more subtle reason that maybe, and I would guess a lot of people haven't really considered, is that INFJs have kind of a dual nature about their traits. And what I mean by dual nature is that the same things that are their strengths are also their weaknesses, and it just depends on how mature and healthy they are, and who they're dealing with, what the circumstances are, and if they've really harnessed their own abilities. Take, for example, the trademark trait of an INFJ, or at least what people think of whenever they hear INFJ, assuming they're even familiar with MBTI. Someone who's versed in MBTI will think empathy. That's one of the first things that they will think. And that's a good thing. I'm not gonna lie, that's, good in its own right to be able to empathize and feel what someone else is feeling. But growing up as an INFJ, and I knew nothing about Myers-Briggs. It wasn't until a lot later in my life, whenever I was in college, did I learn about this stuff. And so for a long time growing up, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was weak. I remember in high school walking into school building, and I just had this flood of overwhelming emotions. And it wasn't until later in my life that I realized that what was happening was I was absorbing all the emotions of everyone around me. And of course, because I wasn't even aware of what was happening or why it was happening, I didn't know how to harness that. It's hard for an INFJ, not impossible, but hard oftentimes to learn how to create boundaries between our own emotions and other people's emotions. And for a while, I couldn't differentiate what I was feeling versus what someone else was feeling. It wasn't until I It was probably early 20s whenever I really started to get that skill down. I mean, I still have moments, my weak moments, whenever I have that happen to me. It still takes some energy because it's not my natural MO to be able to separate my own emotions from other people's. To be fair, if you think about it, pretty much any trait could be good or bad depending on how healthy it is and the extent to which it's taken. And of course, when and how it's used. Take, for example, the ESFP. They have a reputation of being stereotypically irresponsible, kind of forgetful, bad at scheduling, being late all the time, which goes along with the scheduling. But it's that same whimsy and that same spontaneity and that zest for life and that optimism that makes them also so attractive and such a charming personality type. INFJ traits, they're great on paper, but I can tell you that they're not always the easiest or best traits to have, to live with as that INFJ and to be around other people who have to put up with my emotional outbursts whenever I have them. And I can get numb sometimes if I take in too much, and I'm not easy to handle. I apologize if it seemed like I had really given myself and my type airs on that video. It was not intentioned. I'm not saying that, you know, it's a bad thing to be an INFJ. I enjoy who I am and what I am, but I will say that if people were able to choose their personality traits and type, in some cases you can, you know, develop traits, but I'm just saying, as far as what comes naturally, if people could choose, it's not a bad thing to be an INFJ, but I would tell them to think twice about choosing it because it's a hard type to be, at the very least. Because it's rare and our traits are not always understood and not always appreciated. It was hard growing up as an INFJ. It's not that it's a bad thing to be, but it has a lot of difficulty attached to it. It does look very positive whenever you hear about the INFJ, and it looks very magical and ethereal and almost unreal. Sort of like we're fairies of the world. And I'm like, no. Anyway, I hope that this clarifies a few things, and I hope this sheds a little bit of light on what it's like to actually be an INFJ. And not everybody's experience is going to be the same, but I do hope that as a takeaway from this video, that you come to appreciate whatever type that you are and whatever traits that you have, and that you learn to use whatever traits that you've got to live nothing less than the best life that you can live.